Hi all, my name's Hannah and I'm the C5 Nut. Well, today we've got something interesting going on. Right, so I got the opportunity to help out a mate with a conversion on a motorhome. Well, it's not a motorhome. It's an old ex-ambulance system, and yeah, basically it's got a ton of wiring in there that needs to come out. Now, if you're not aware of what ambulances have in their cabs, I didn't really do any video because it was in the middle of, well, basically the van was up at my mate's yard in the middle of nowhere. There was no phone signal, there was nothing like that, and we had limited time to get the system out. So I did a bit of a deal with the guy who owns the van, so didn't really charge him anything just to rip it out. In exchanges, I get to keep the Genisys system. So the Genisys system is what gets fitted to the ambulances. They sometimes get called a different name. There's a different system out there that sometimes gets used. But what the Genisys system does is, if you got, say, like a patient who's sort of like on life support or something silly like that, the system is designed to make sure that the patient's comfortable. So if it's too hot, it puts the air conditioning on. If it's too cold, it puts the heating on. If the batteries get weak, it will then automatically start the van, or even just basically let someone know that, you know, there's quite a lot with the Genisys system and what it does. It also puts like the blues and twos on. You know, you just hit the button and it will do its thing. So I'm not entirely sure what police actually use in their cars, but I have a way of finding out, and no, that's not getting arrested by the old bill. Yeah, I have quite a few contacts in the old bill, so I might sort of pull one of them strings and just see what sort of systems they use. But then again, they may not be able to tell me anyway because of, you know, their stuff. So the plan for today is obviously, I'll show you some photos of what the Genisys looks like, and then we're going to look into it a little bit more in depth of, now that it's taken out, can we actually make this thing work? And why do Genisys like need a lot of power? I mean, this sucker's got really thick cables, so we're going to have a look into why Genisys is drawing a lot more power. And like at the end of the road, the final bit is Genisys useful for something else? Can we sort of repurpose it? So not just for ambulances, but can we actually use it in the motorhome world? Now there's a thought. So yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip the camera around because we're in our wonderful workshop. It was well, today is like the next day of me ripping it out, but what I'm going to do is flip the camera around and I'll show you what we've got to work with. So guys, tons of wires, not so many wires, a box full of wires. Yeah, there's a ton of crap in that, and a shed load, and I mean absolute manic of cables. Right, now there's two boards. In the photo there was a middle board, and that was a battery charger, but I said to the guy, look, just leave that battery charger in there. That might be some sort of useful for him to use for his converted ambulance. So you got the main brain of Genisys, you got the power distribution, and these are really thick cables. And look at these relays. I mean, that is some contacts in there Yeah, so this is sort of like the power distribution board, and that does all the brains and stuff. And there's these like little modules. Yeah, so not entirely sure what this one is, but it's something to do with speakers, so I think that might actually talk. But yeah, let's see what that's all about. That's some sort of something to do with the siren slash alarm. It's got all the other bits and bobs into it, and yeah, we will start looking at this. But I think the best thing for me to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to take off all of this. I mean, these are like really thick cables. The annoying thing was because we were limited time, I couldn't pull the whole entire wiring out. So there's some places I had to cut the wiring just to get it out. But that's not a biggie. I will say the quality of the cable is really good. I mean, look at this. That is some expensive cable, rather than, you know, just using the old duct tape. You know, it looks really good quality cable. I mean, these are like split off individually through like a piece of heat shrink, but then into that massive thick cable. And that's a lot of money just to do that side of things. Yeah. From what I learnt with Genisys at the moment is, I think it's a bit overkill. I mean, they got like a small button. Now this was in the rear, so where the patient was, you know, this is where this was sat. Now there was a much bigger one, but unfortunately it had vanished. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what happened to the other one. But this is the only control panel we've got. Now, like I said, there is a digital version, and from what I can gather is you can actually link quite a few of these up together. So that's I'm losing the will to live, but it's sort of like got, you know, lights. There's like roof fans. There's an AC button. There's a heater button. It says Truma there. I'm not entirely sure, unless that's a blue light. And then you've got spotlights, and then these are just like little lights on the side that tell you what's what. So you've got the side door, rear door, ramp, power, low battery, and load shed, whatever that freaking means. But yeah, that's an interesting little device. Yeah. So now apparently I watched someone else's video who's got the same sort of system, and they're playing around with it as well. Apparently that the engine needs to be running in order to make the diesel heater work. Not entirely sure if that is true or not, but there was a signal wire from the heater to one of these modules, so it don't surprise me. But at the same time, I don't see why they do that, because the Genisys has, so the vehicle has 4 batteries. You've got the vehicle battery, then you've got 2 leisure batteries which are connected in parallel, and then you got another battery which is the comms battery. Now I think the comms battery is something to do with like the cameras and stuff like that. There was basically, whoever decommissioned that van, they took the cameras out, but they also went a bit crazy with the old snippy snip, and we believe that's what's happened with the other control unit. When they took the camera systems out, they also ripped the other controller out for some unknown reason. But yeah, that's all we've got left with. Right, I'm gonna stop the video. I'm gonna rip out all these, and then I'll bring you back. Right guys, and as you can see, nothing. That is full, and I mean full to the brim of wiring. I have stripped it down, just doing some testing regards to some of these wires went to the Genisys. I worked out what wire was what. I did switch it on, and there was a puff of smoke come out of this one, and that one's the ECU. So Not entirely sure why that's happened. Now this is one of a few controls. The original one that was cut out, this is before I got to the vehicle, all the wires was all hanging out. I do remember these three lit up, but this particular one wasn't lit up at all, and I'm just wondering if now I've forced it with some power, it did get quite warm, so I've got a feeling this one's dead. But where we actually go with this, and I'm going to try and get another one of these. I want to try and get a different controller that will talk to it, because I've got a feeling that using this controller on this isn't going to work unless you have the master controller. So yeah, I've got a feeling just with this setup as it is may not work. But yeah, I mean, where does that take us like now? Well, it gives me a chance to see what this does, see what that does. You know, basically just look around and find out what part does what. And I think we will be doing another video because I would like to try and get this one sort of marginally working and just have a bit of a play. You know, the more you play, the more you learn from them. So yeah, I would like to know a little bit more information on these. So if you guys know, please drop a message down below. I'm quite intrigued. Anyway guys, I'm going to leave it here because I'm pretty tired. It's been a long old day today. So yeah, if you like what you see, please give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And just may at some point I might make another video. Take care guys, see you soon. Right guys, so it's been a couple of weeks now since I did the last video. I've lost my glasses, so these are my spare, so it is what it is. Right, so this Genisys system, I've actually been looking online to find out what we're actually dealing with. Now Genisys consists of three things. One which is electronic control module, which is that thing went up in a puff of smoke. A keypad, so we could probably say something like this, or the digital version. And finally the output module, which is called an OPM, which is something like these. Now there's actually four of these and they do different things. Now on the actual box themselves it will say under here, so this is module number 4, address number 4, and you can actually set which address this actually is by under here, just right in the middle there. It's a little switch and you can then set it to what address you need it to. So basically it's like that. So you could probably say this by changing the screw. Instead of module 4 it becomes module 1 or module 2 or module 3, whatever you want to set it to. Yeah, I've actually learned quite a lot over the last couple of days researching all of this. Now spoke to some guy and he said that these ECUs do suffer really badly. Now I discovered after ripping out the Genisys that the guy who has the van has to keep jump starting it now and then. Now apparently if you were to jump start the Genisys, jump start the van, it causes a spike to these ECUs. So frustration as it is, this was already dead before I even got to it. Doesn't help with the fact of that there is a control pad. So this is what they call the slave, but the master control pad's got like a little LCD display in there, and someone went a bit crazy with it. Now, speaking to the owner of the van, he said he actually bought the van from a builder who bought it in an auction. So when the builder got hold of it, he didn't like the display, so he just cut it all up without removing all the wiring or disabling the Genisys or anything like that. He just left the Genisys as it is, but just cut the cable into the old screen thing. Now that frustrates the hell out of me, because one, you should never cut wires if there's power on there, and two, there's a high chance of him screwing up the van permanently. And lucky enough he didn't get there, because obviously the van still runs and drives and stuff. So he was very lucky on that one. So the control unit with the display, I found one on eBay, and I really had to sit down and think about what am I going to do, because 400 quid! Somebody want 400 quid just for a little unit about this big. I like Genisys quite a lot, but I'm not paying 400 quid for a display unit for it. That is stupid amount of money. And in all fairness, I really can't see the NHS sort of put second-hand units in. I just can't see the logic in it. If it goes, then they're going to obviously put a new one in, because there's a high chance of it failing again. So 400 quid for a second-hand one? Are you for real? That's nuts. ECU, like I said, this thing is basically just a paperweight. It's useless. It doesn't do anything. Someone said they might be able to fix it. It might be a possibility. I might go down just to see if we can get it fixed. Purely only for testing purposes. That's all I'm going to use it for. I'm not going to use it for anything else. I know I said earlier in the video that it would be nice if we can repurpose them, but that will be not with this device, not with any of these devices that I have here. It'd be pure. This is purely for obviously your benefit to see the video on what Genisys is about, but also my benefit, because I've actually got quite a lot of friends who are considering about buying ambulances and converting them and all that stuff. But I've actually got one guy, he lives in his van and still has his Genisys system on board, but I tried to persuade him and he's just not having any of it. He's insisted in keeping Genisys in his van. Well, that's up to him. It's his van. If that's what he wants to do, that's fine. But I do get calls from him going, "Oh, the Genisys is playing up." Well, mate, what do you want me to do about it? Yeah, so I've got issues like that. But if I got an opportunity to actually take one of these out of a van again, I'm going to take it, because I tell you what, I really enjoyed myself taking all this out. See, even though I do a lot of electronics and things like that, different electronics that I don't really do every day sort of calms me down a little bit, if that makes any sense. Yeah, it's a bit nuts really. So obviously the Genisys is the three core points. We've worked on that. Now the ECU, so this knackered one, it's got 24 digital inputs. It talks about many other sort of like high side switching and digital and all that stuff, and I don't think you guys would be interested in that sort of thing. But apart from the 24 digital inputs, it's also got 4 analog inputs. So it monitors up to 4 separate battery banks, battery voltage display on a keypad, temperature monitoring, all that stuff, and supports 15 additional Genisys inputs and outputs. So basically you could have 15 of these put together and it still work, which I think is pretty nuts. We've got to do that. We've got to put all these together. Let's see what we can do with it. But again, I'm not paying 400 quid for a display unit. Yeah, that's nuts. Right, so that's the ECU side of things. So that's what it can do, and all that does is transfers info from there to there. So this is the boss, and this is the poor retired, well, the poor, oh, what would you want to call it, the poor person who's got to do all the donkey work. So that's the chief and that's the Indian. Yeah, right, so this one. So the slave, the Indian, whatever you want to call it, the output module is what we're going to call it. Now, this actually surprised me when I was doing research on it. It's got up to 16 intelligent output modules. A total of 150 amps through that. 150 amps. Now, some modules are different than others, but majority of them is so it's got 16 outputs, 2 of which are rated at 30 amps, and the rest of them are, the 14 other pins is rated at 15 amps each. Now, that's a heck of a lot of power through something like that. You know, that's nuts. Really is nuts. And apparently it's got short circuit protection and overload protection. That's what survived, you know, the old jump start thing. Apparently this is meant to have it, but doesn't have it. And these are, well, you jump start it, these fail. So, yeah, that's the ECU. So, yeah, nuts. 150 amps this thing takes. And there's 4 of them. Jesus Christ, that's nuts. Right. One final thing is I will swip the camera around and show you the rest of the board. Like I said, I can't test it, it's just one of them things. But let's have a look down on the board. Okay guys, so now these units, there's a single bolt, and you unscrew the bolt and these come off. Now this rail is actually a 12-volt rail, hence the nice big thick cable there. The earth side of things comes up through the front, but majority of the signals that come out of here are all 12 volts anyway. Right, so there was a little module up here. Now, after closer inspection and things like this is one of them CAN bus module decoders. So basically, if you were to switch the lights on, switch the hazards on, even put the vehicle in reverse, this will tell the ECU of what's happening to the van. Right. Now, this other one here, which is another CAN device, this actually does the locking side of things. So when the Genisys actually tells this thing to lock all the doors, it will then lock all the doors on the van. Again, what can I say about that? So just these units are all the communications between the actual vehicle harness and Genisys. Then we've got the output module number 1, we've got output number 2, number 3, obviously number 4 is up there. Now, I did some research about this. Now, this particular model is actually obsolete, but it has quite a lot of stuff going on in regards to the radio and the sirens. Now, from what I can gather through the internet, is when the sirens are off and you're operating that radio, it's like a CB radio but digital, the sound is normal, but as soon as you turn on the sirens and everything else, obviously the cab's really noisy, and supposedly all this box does is increase the volume of the radio, so you can actually hear what the walkie-talkie, you know, whoever's talking to you on the radio, you can actually hear them over the sound of the sirens. Now, this particular one down here, I think is a preamplifier. Let me see if I can zoom in. Yeah, I think it's a preamplifier. Now, I'm saying I think it's something to do with audio. It's got speaker outputs on it. There was quite a few speakers in the back of the van, but there was an option of that. Well, there was a cable from that unit to the stereo. So I'm not entirely sure if that's what was so when you turn the stereo on, that was then feeding power back into the speakers in the back, or if it was just purely on the front. but also there was a cable coming from that to the ECU of the Genisys. So if you were in the back and you're trying to save this person's life for a motorbike accident or whatever you want to say, and Genisys is low on power, it will actually talk to you, you know, Genisys low on power, blah, blah, blah. Now, there was some wiring, actually, that Genisys was able to start the vehicle up. Now, I can't confirm if that is true or not. I really do not know off the top of my head if that is physically possible because of it was a Fiat Ducato 2011 plate. It's got a little chip inside the key, so I can't say for certain if this CAN bus down here actually overrides the ECU signal or the key signal in order for the engine to self-start. So I really don't know on that one. If you know a little bit more, please let me know. There was one question from a guy who's currently ripping one of these out, who's saying that he has to keep part of it in because of the rear lights due to an MOT. In all fairness, mate, if you are watching this, you can still take the modules out. You just got to rewire the lights. Really, there is minimal specifications for the MOTs. So when it comes to lights, as long as the original lights on the van is still working, then you should be fine, regardless if the lights on the top of the roof, say like the blue flashing light or whatnot, that is not part of an MOT. So as long as the key points regards to the lights for the MOT is fully working and everything else, you shouldn't really have an issue. You should be able to take these the Genisys out. If you still have issues, send me a message below or try and find me on Facebook. I will be doing a little sort of question time. A lot of people on YouTube, a lot of people have actually sent me messages on Facebook sort of asking, you know, do I do this, do I do that, what's my opinion of this? So I'm going to answer those questions shortly in another video. But yeah, if you can easily contact me, no, not a problem. Yeah, if you do get stuck, send me a message and I'll see what I can do for you. Right guys, so I've been looking into regards to, I mentioned during the video that I've got some contacts with the police. Now during my research on the old Genisys system, I've actually come across a little more info about what the police use. Now, from the same company who actually make the Genisys system, which is Ring Coronation, they've actually got a Genisys purely for the old bill. It's called the Genisys XVI, and it's just a single board with basically a couple of these modules together. And from what I can gather, all it does is like the lights. That's it. It doesn't really do anything more. Obviously, there's no heavy power needed for anything else other than the lights. Possibly the radio might go there, and they basically just have one of these. That's it. So yes, the police do use Genisys, but it's a shorter version of the Genisys. So yeah, what can I say? It took a while for me to get all the information like this. Again, there's not a lot of stuff on online, but yeah, you can only do what you can do. Right guys, I'm gonna probably leave the video here because I think it's gone on a bit too long. So I just want to say thank you very much for Rui, who let me remove the Genisys system out of his van. And thank you again to actually make this video possible. It's something I've been wanting to do for a good number of years, and I'm glad I can now tick that off my bucket list of playing around with Genisys. Although I would like to explore a little bit more into it, but if I do a video, I don't know. We'll see where that goes. So guys, if you like what you see, please give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Please share my videos. My videos range from anything from van life, because I live in my van, have done for 3 years, all the way from Citroen stuff, Citroen C5s, car shows. I do quite a lot of wiring on motorhomes, so when I get something interesting come along, I will do a video. Yeah, I do all sorts of weird stuff, so yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing my videos, I'll be very grateful for that. Anyway guys, thank you ever so much for watching. At some point I'll do another video. Take care.